When it comes to religious views, there are usually a variety of different perspectives. Religion is not a topic many people want to talk about. This makes it difficult for people to understand these perspectives. When talking about public schools, there is an argument about whether or not religion should be a part of the curriculum. The superintendent of our public high school, Patricia Chamberlain, talked to us about the role that religion is permitted to play in our curriculum.
The courts have been very specific about religion in public schools, that schools cannot establish a religion or religious practice. There's a big idea, we would call it, that's separation of church and state. The First Amendment right would say that the schools cannot establish religion.
What got us thinking about the role of religion in the public school system was when we heard about the incident at Wellesley Middle School. In the 2010 to 2011 school year in Wellesley, Massachusetts, there was an uproar in the community about a 6th grade field trip to a local mosque. The trip was meant for educational purposes, but because of a video taken of students participating in prayer, the parents of the children sued the school, and others in the community became upset with the school's world religions program. We talked to some students and teachers about their opinion of the role of religion in our school's curriculum.
It's certainly both useful and I think essential when we're talking about education. For instance, in English class, it's really impossible to understand a lot of literary allusions without knowledge of the Bible.
From what I've seen in the history department, they cover a number of different religions that are out there and their development over time and how that relates to history. And I think that exposure to different types is a good thing. The line crossed between religious freedom and the school setting would be, again, if you're trying to preach to someone or convert to someone. As a class in whole, if you're asked a question by a student, I think there should be no problem being able to sit down with them and tell them where you're coming from without trying to force them into that area.
Students should be able to freely practice their religious beliefs in school, but I think teachers shouldn't force anything upon the kids. Whatever we believe in, that's what makes us who we are.
I think it's really important to understand different religious beliefs. In our Social Studies 9 course, we do focus on the major religions of the world, because if you want to really understand people, a lot of individual people and also culture is based around religion. So for example, we in America, we value freedom and equality. We tend to think that everyone is created equal, and that's the right way of understanding the world. But if you look at Indian society, which is mostly Hindus don't believe that everyone is equal, right? They believe in a caste system, and that caste system is justified by religion. There's some people who have better karma, who are at the top of the caste, and there's some people who need to work on their karma and have to, fulfill their certain role in life. Understand the way that they view the world, the way their culture works. You really have to understand their religion.
Middle school teacher Jonathan Rabinowitz was one of the teachers present on the Wellesley field trip to the mosque.
This whole idea of perspective and understanding other people. There was one woman from Saudi Arabia. To this day, I believe that the women in Saudi Arabia are not allowed to drive. And just as a human to human, I remember we were talking about this, and someone, maybe it was me or someone else, asked this teacher, what do you feel about not being able to drive in Saudi Arabia? And I always remember her answer. She saw the opportunity or the law about her not being able to drive almost as putting her on a pedestal, almost treating her like royalty, almost this idea that she was so valuable to the society that yes, she couldn't drive, but someone else would drive her. She turned it around the way she answered the question. And not that I agree with that, but I remember just thinking that we may have our perspectives about things and it might seem black and white, but when I heard her talk about not having the right to drive and seeing it as empowering to her, whether or not what we think about that, it struck me that people can have completely different views than we do about something, and who are we to necessarily judge it?
We interviewed Linda Wertheimer, the author of Faith Ed, who explained the importance of teaching religion.
I grew up as the only Jew in a small Ohio town. The very first week of school, there was a woman who came in and she taught weekly classes on Christianity. And she was paid for by a local group of churches. And here I was Jewish, and here was this class on Christianity, and it was preaching. And my parents got me excused, but everyone then noticed that I was the one kid, leaving the classroom every week. And what happened as a result of that was I became slightly ostracized and sort of isolated from my classmates. They were like, well, what's a Jew? Why don't you go to our class, that kind of thing. And it got me sort of thinking, like, what if instead of preaching to us about religion, they had taught us about different religions?
Sometimes it can be difficult for religious and non-religious people to understand each other. That is why it is so important to educate, to increase tolerance among them.
It's a very odd thing that the very word atheism has a sort of terrible resonance to people.
Dawkins says when it comes to atheism, most people just don't get it.
In class, if we talk about religion, I usually am the only one that practices religion. And when we talk about it and we talk about God and whether or not there's a heaven, I feel like an outsider. And it's not just because I'm the only one. I would be fine being the only one, but it's just the fact that the students made me feel naive because I believed in a God and that there was a heaven. The feeling of being an outsider, especially in a school learning environment, wasn't a comfortable feeling. Maybe if religion was taught specifically, not just talked about during one class, I think that maybe tolerance would be better. Maybe situations like that wouldn't happen.
We asked the teachers at the Wellesley Middle School how they felt about the incident.
Nice things that came out about this was that the town actually sort of had an informal debate over whether they feel like this is an important curriculum to do. From people living here, we got probably 20 positive pieces of feedback for every one that was negative. We actually got a lot of feedback about, wow, no, don't stop what you're doing. Think about, think about some of the details we might want to do better and more carefully, but the ideas behind the program were actually pretty widely supported.
Students can learn about different religions without compromising between the separation between church and state by doing their own research. Like I said before, they could choose to do an independent project. I did it, and we each had to make up our own religion. Before that, we had to also learn about the different religions, but we did the research. The teacher wasn't saying, giving a little pointers, but without any bias whatsoever.
So whenever we're talking about the scriptures of any of the religions, we'll talk about the fact that archaeologists and historians haven't found proof for many of the things that the scriptures talk about. So just trying to make sure to differentiate as we're teaching about Jesus performing miracles, we're qualifying that by saying this is what Christians believe based on their scripture, but there is not any historical proof for things like that.
We need to do a better job of understanding what is legal and what is not when it comes to religion in the public schools. There needs to be more training of administrators even today so that they understand that religious assemblies are not appropriate, that having youth pastors roaming the lunchroom and inviting kids to come join a Christian youth group is really not appropriate, that a principal standing in front of a Bible club today, still doing this today, and reading scripture is not appropriate. That it's okay for students to lead prayer if they want.
You don't want people to feel as though they are being indoctrinated, or even more subtly that one religion is being preferred over another.
I think it's the intention. My intention is to help you understand this religion better, to understand the culture and the history around this, and not to kind of sway you to believe something.
Religion has always been a controversial topic. It has caused a lot of disagreements between people of different faiths and people who are non-religious. We discovered that the problem is not the belief, it is just a lack of understanding. That is why it is crucial to teach people about different religions that dominate our world's culture. Learning about these beliefs will not only help students understand the perspectives of people from different faiths, but it will also help increase and encourage religious tolerance.